K-Flock is facing the fight of his life. Once one of the Bronx's most promising rappers, he's now staring down a maximum sentence after pleading guilty to charges that could keep him behind bars for decades. But what if there's more to the story? Rumors are swirling that Flock might take a path no one saw coming, one that could shock his fans and the entire hip-hop world. In this video, we're diving deep into his rise from the streets, his fall in the courtroom, and the decision that could change everything. K-Flock legal battle. Man, it's rough out here for K-Flock. The rapper's troubles with the law kicked off on December 16, 2021. What started as a regular day quickly spiraled into something much darker. On that day, Oscar Hernandez, known around the Bronx as O.Y. Waka, was posted up in a barbershop when he noticed K-Flock strolling by. The CCTV cameras caught every move, Hernandez stepping out, trailing behind Flock, and that's when the tension started to build. Now, the exact details of what went down between them are still murky, but one thing's for sure, a confrontation erupted. Within seconds, gunshots rang out, cutting through the usual noise of the neighborhood. Hernandez took bullets to his back and neck, dropping to the ground as chaos erupted around him. Despite the medics' efforts, Hernandez's injuries were too severe. He passed away just a few days later, leaving his family and community in shock. He was only 16, just a kid with his whole life ahead of him, gone in an instant. The aftermath was nothing short of pandemonium. The cops wasted no time launching an investigation, with that CCTV footage becoming a crucial piece of the puzzle. As the days passed, the pressure on K-Flock mounted. Then, on December 23rd, just a week after the shooting, K-Flock made the decision to turn himself in to the NYPD. It was a bold move, but it didn't stop the hammer from coming down. They charged him with first-degree murder, a charge that could mean spending the rest of his life behind bars. His lawyer argued it was all self-defense.
It's all on video. When the guy hits the ground, he's got a loaded gun that was in his pocket that his hand was on at the time. We considered that to be self-defense.
But the prosecution wasn't having it. They had their own version of events, and it wasn't looking good for K-Flock. After K-Flock was arrested, he was shipped off to Rikers Island, one of the toughest jails in the country. But just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. While K-Flock was sitting in Rikers, waiting for his trial over the Oscar Hernandez murder, another bombshell dropped, a RICO indictment. On February 23, 2023, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams and NYPD Commissioner Keechan L. Sewell made it official. They unsealed an indictment that charged K-Flock and several others with a slew of serious crimes. We're talking racketeering conspiracy, murder in aid of racketeering, and using firearms that led to death. The stakes just got even higher, and the legal heat turned up to a whole new level. Now, if you're wondering what RICO is, let me break it down for you. The RICO Act, short for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, is a federal law enacted back in 1970, originally to dismantle mafia crime families. But here's the thing, it doesn't just target the people pulling the trigger or making the deal. RICO goes after the big fish, the leaders, the masterminds, the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes. Under RICO, if someone's part of an enterprise involved in a pattern of criminal activities, think murder, kidnapping, gambling, bribery, or money laundering, they can be charged with racketeering. To nail someone under RICO, prosecutors have to prove that the defendant committed at least 2 racketeering acts within a 10-year span, all connected to that criminal enterprise. And the penalties? They're brutal. Up to 20 years in prison per count, plus hefty fines, and you lose everything you gain through those illegal activities. K-Flock isn't the only high-profile rapper caught in the RICO web. Just look at Young Thug. Over the past 2 years, he's been entangled in one of the most explosive RICO cases in hip-hop history. Back in May 2022, the entire rap world was shaken when Young Thug, known offstage as Jeffrey Williams, and 27 others were hit with a staggering 56-count indictment. This wasn't just any case. It was orchestrated by Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, who accused Young Thug and his crew of being deeply rooted in organized crime. The prosecution laid it all out, painting YSL, Young Thug's collective, as way more than just a music label. According to them, YSL was a criminal organization with deep ties to the infamous Bloods gang. They backed up their claims with an indictment listing 182 separate instances of gang activity and conspiracies, and they didn't hold back on the evidence. Everything from rap lyrics to social media posts, even down to the word slime printed on their clothing, was used to build their case. A major turning point in the investigation came with the murder of Donovan Thomas Jr., a known rival gang member, in January 2015. Thomas was taken out in a brutal drive-by shooting that sent shockwaves through the streets. Investigators didn't waste any time linking the murder to YSL, and what they uncovered was damning. They found out that Young Thug had rented the car used in the drive-by, a connection that prosecutors argued wasn't just a coincidence. They claimed this directly tied him to the gang's violent activities, accusing him of ordering the hit and providing the weapons that took Thomas's life. For the last 19 months, Young Thug has been been caught in the legal storm that has kept the entire hip-hop world on edge. This trial has been anything but straightforward. It's been a wild ride with so many crazy twists that it feels like something straight out of a movie. From courtroom disruptions with shouts of "Free Thug, mistrial," echoing through the halls, to a witness admitting on the stand that he was high during his testimony. Yeah, you heard that right. High on the stand. The witness, Adrian Bean, was supposed to testify about Young Thug's alleged gang ties. But instead, things took a bizarre turn when Bean started dozing off in the middle of his testimony. At one point, he suddenly asked for water and then casually confessed to being high.
Can I get a water or something? I'm so high right now, y'all. I'm about to go to sleep on y'all ass.
And Adrian Bean wasn't the only witness adding to the courtroom theatrics. Another witness, Lil Woody, was just as uncooperative. When called to testify against Young Thug, Lil Woody pleaded the fifth on nearly every question, refusing to even answer basic questions like his age.
How old are you?
Grown.
Okay, what does grown mean?
I'm an adult.
Okay. And when you say you're an adult, what number in years are you?
I plead the fifth.
All these courtroom antics are only dragging out Young Thug's trial and making it seem less likely that he'll be seeing the light of day anytime soon. This just goes to show how serious these RICO cases can get, and K-Flock's situation might not be really different. It's not looking good for him at all, and he's not alone in this. Casanova is another rapper caught up in the RICO dragnet.
You don't want to come here. Trust me.
For those who don't know, Casanova was sentenced to over 15 years in prison for his involvement in a series of criminal activities linked to the untouchable Gorilla Stone Nation, a gang affiliated with the Bloods. His RICO charges were no joke. They stemmed from multiple incidents that underscored his role as a high-profile leader within the gang. One of the most significant events was on July 5th, 2020, at a house party in Miami. Casanova fired a gun during a dispute, seriously injuring 2 gang members. Another key event tied to his charges was a robbery in August 2018 at a Manhattan diner, where Casanova and his associate violently assaulted a victim over a misunderstanding involving a cell phone photo. But it didn't stop there. Casanova was also involved in a conspiracy to traffic large quantities of marijuana, with his operations stretching across several states, contributing to the nationwide expansion of Gorilla Stone's criminal activities. Casanova's downfall culminated in his arrest in December 2020 after he surrendered to authorities. By May 2022, he pled guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, and drug trafficking, leading to his sentencing in June 2023 to 188 months, over 15 years in federal prison. Casanova's story is a clear reminder of how these RICO charges can drag someone deep into the system, especially when their persona is so tightly tied to the streets. And that's exactly what we're seeing with K-Flock. His legal battles aren't just some random misfortune. They're a direct consequence of the dangerous persona he's been building from a young age. K-Flock's controversial persona. From a young age, Kevin Perez, now known to the world as K-Flock, was no stranger to trouble. Born in the Bronx in 2003, his early years were shaped by a constant struggle with the law and deep-rooted ties to gang culture, all a direct product of the unforgiving environment he grew up in. The Bronx, where K-Flock was raised, is often celebrated as the birthplace of hip-hop, carrying a rich cultural legacy that's unmatched. But beneath that cultural pride lies one of the toughest environments in New York City. The streets of the Bronx are no joke, riddled with poverty, violence, and a history of crime that runs deep. In 2022, the Bronx recorded a violent crime rate of 8.9 per 1,000 residents, significantly higher than the citywide rate of 5.1. This includes everything from murders to robberies, assaults, and more, making the Bronx the most dangerous of New York's 5 boroughs. And it's not just the violence, it's the crushing weight of poverty that shapes life in the Bronx. With about 27.7% of residents living below the poverty line, compared to the state average of 14.3%, the Bronx is a place where economic hardship is the norm. This combination of poverty and violence creates a breeding ground for the street life that so many young people like K-Flock get caught up in from an early age. K-Flock's mother was well aware of the dangers that their environment posed. She tried her best to keep him away from the streets, pushing him towards positive activities in the hope of steering him clear of trouble. K-Flock dabbled in sports, with a particular interest in boxing, and even showed a flair for fashion.
He wanted to actually do clothing designs and stuff like that. Okay. I had him in boxing because that's what we do.
But despite his mother's best efforts, the pull of the street streets was too powerful to resist. By the time he was just 10 years old, K-Flock was already spending his days on the block, not just observing, but actively soaking up the street culture around him, and even beginning to experiment with rap. This early exposure to the harsh realities of street life quickly started to mold the controversial persona he's known for today. By the age of 15, K-Flock found himself on the wrong side of the law, facing a charge of third-degree robbery and receiving a year of probation. This marked the start of a public image that would only grow more intense over time. As he continued to navigate the streets, K-Flock's affiliations with different gangs began to solidify, further shaping the reputation that now precedes him. One of the most significant ties K-Flock has is with the notorious Sex Money Murder Gang, SMM for short. This crew isn't just some small-time operation. Their roots run deep, all the way back to the early 1990s in the Soundview section of the Bronx. The gang was officially founded on July 3rd, 1993 by Peter "Pistol Pete" Rollick. You see, Rollick quickly made a name for himself in the criminal underworld, earning a reputation for his ruthlessness and strategic mind. So SMM's early days were all about claiming their turf in Soundview, and let me tell you right now, it wasn't a peaceful process. The Bronx was already a war zone with rival gangs clashing over territory, and SMM had to fight for every inch. Drug trafficking, armed robbery, and violent crimes became their calling cards, helping them not only secure their territory, but also stack the cash needed to expand their operations. Pistol Pete's reign eventually led him to Rikers Island, where he crossed paths with the leaders of the United Blood Nation and UBN, a powerhouse prison gang. Recognizing the opportunity, Rollick aligned SMM with UBN, solidifying their status as one of the original sets of the New York East Coast Bloods. This move was a game changer, giving SMM access to a vast network and the muscle to spread their influence beyond the Bronx. This alliance with UBN wasn't just about survival, it was about growth. With UBN's backing, SMM spread like wildfire, extending their reach into other parts of the South Bronx and across Brooklyn. Neighborhoods like Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brownsville, Crown Heights, and East New York fell under their influence. They even made their way onto Long Island, setting up shop in places like Roosevelt and Hempstead. But SMM wasn't just making moves, they were making headlines. Their brutality and willingness to use extreme violence earned them a fearsome reputation. Pistol Pete himself became infamous after being sentenced to life without parole, locked away in the federal Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. He admitted to killing 6 people in the Stevenson Commons complex in Soundview, a crime spree that shocked the community and cemented SMM's reputation as one of the most dangerous gangs around. Despite being a model prisoner, Pete's name still strikes fear. Any word from him could still trigger action from SMM's members, keeping his communication severely restricted. But SMM isn't the only crew K-Flock is tied to. He's also deep in with another notorious gang, Sevside. This crew has a whole different vibe. Sevside got its start in the Bronx too, specifically around East 187th Street, right where K-Flock was born and raised. The gangbangers from Sevside have been making noise for years, forming alliances with crews from Mount Vernon and Hilltop, together known as the HTYBs, or Hilltop Young Bosses. These alliances were about survival and dominance, crucial for holding it down in the unforgiving streets of the Bronx. The HTYBs had already established themselves as a force to be reckoned with, running the streets, claiming territory, and making sure everyone knew who held the power. K-Flock grew up in the middle of this, side by side with 2 other Sevside natives, Dougie B and B-Love. But with gang life comes beef, and K-Flock's association with Sevside put him right in the middle of rivalries and internal conflicts. One of the most notable incidents that showed just how tense things could get was the chain-snatching drama involving Dougie B and PNVJ. PNVJ, another rapper from their block, was one of the first in the Bronx to rap over a UK drill beat, even helping introduce Dougie B to the potential of the music industry. But the streets have a way of turning friends into enemies, and it wasn't long before tension started bubbling up between the two. Things hit a boiling point when Dougie B allegedly snatched PNVJ's chain, a move that's the ultimate sign of disrespect in the streets. Dougie didn't just take the chain, he flaunted it online, posing with his so-called trophy for the world to see. The fallout from this stunt was real. Dougie B ended up doing some time in jail, but the whole situation only boosted his status within the gang and the Bronx drill scene. Even K-Flock couldn't resist getting in on the action, bragging about the chain snatching on Instagram, which only added more fuel to the fire.
We took PV chain.
All these street activities played a huge role in shaping his persona, but they also came with heavy consequences. It's this kind of deep involvement in the streets that landed K-Flock with a RICO charge hanging over his head. According to the indictment, the murder of Hernandez wasn't some random act or a case of self-defense like his lawyer claimed. Nah, this was part of a much bigger picture, a pattern of violence orchestrated by Sevside. From 2019 to 2022, Sevside was on a rampage, unleashing a wave of shootings and assaults that terrorized the Bronx and Manhattan. These weren't just random acts of violence, they were were targeted hits against rival gangs meant to show who really ran the streets. The RICO indictment lays it all out, detailing specific incidents that paint a clear picture of the gang's brutal activities. On June 20th, 2020, K Flock, along with Michael Gant and Isaiah Rosen, allegedly shot at rival gang members. The next year, on November 10th, 2021, K Flock, Devin Mason, and Irvin Beeman allegedly opened fire on rival gang members. The most recent incident in the indictment happened on February 10th, 2022, when Mason allegedly shot at a rival, hitting an innocent bystander in the process. With all this weighing against him, the big question remains: will K Flock be released anytime soon? K Flock's murder and RICO charges have kept the rapper behind bars for over a year, and with the weight of both cases combined, his release seems like a distant dream. But despite the bleak outlook, K Flock's team isn't throwing in the towel. They're still fighting, determined to get him out and clear his name. Recently, they filed a motion requesting his release on a $1.4 million bail. Their argument hinges on the claim that K Flock has no significant criminal history and has not given authorities any reason to distrust him aside from the current charges. They believe that this substantial bail amount, coupled with strict conditions, would be sufficient to ensure his compliance with court orders. But the request doesn't stop at bail. K Flock's team is also proposing that he be placed under house arrest if the judge grants bail. They suggest strict house arrest, GPS monitoring, posting significant properties, and a third-party custodian as measures that would protect the public and guarantee K Flock's appearance in court. Since his arrest, K Flock has made efforts to show that he is on a path to redemption. In June of last year, he shared an open letter on Instagram, urging his followers to stop the violence. He spoke candidly about the pain of losing two brothers to gun violence while behind bars and described his incarceration as a life lesson. This message of peace has resonated with many of his fans, but despite all this, the chances of bail still seem slim. But there might be another way out for K Flock, one that involves cooperation. If he decides to work with the authorities, giving them the intel they need, it could seriously reduce his sentence. Just look at 6ix9ine. He took a similar route. Back in November 2018, the FBI nabbed 6ix9ine, also known as Daniel Hernandez, along with several other members of the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods. They were hit with some heavy charges, including racketeering conspiracy, firearms offenses, and narcotics trafficking. The indictment painted a brutal picture of a gang that had been terrorizing New York City, committing brazen acts of violence and spreading fear in the streets. Hernandez wasn't just a bystander. He was accused of being deep in the game, helping to plan and execute robberies and shootings. The charges were no joke. Hernandez was staring down a minimum sentence of 47 years, with the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. It looked like the end of the road for 6ix9ine, whose rise to fame had been meteoric, only to come crashing down in flames. But in a twist that shocked both his fans and the entire hip-hop world, Hernandez made a move that would change everything. In January 2019, Hernandez pleaded guilty to 9 federal charges, including racketeering conspiracy and firearms offenses. During his plea, he didn't just admit to being part of the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods, he also agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors, laying bare the inner workings of the gang. This cooperation was a game changer. Hernandez's testimony, full of details about the gang's operations and key players, was like gold for the prosecution. His willingness to talk helped take down several high-ranking members of the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods, effectively crippling the gang's power. In return, the government agreed to put in a good word with the judge, recommending a sentence far below the mandatory minimum of 47 years. By December 2019, Hernandez's gamble paid off. He was sentenced to just 2 years in prison, a far cry from the life sentence he had been staring down. The judge acknowledged his cooperation and the risks he took to assist the authorities. With time served included in his sentence, Hernandez was out of jail by August 2020, walking free much sooner than anyone expected. But 6ix9ine's freedom came with a heavy price. The hip-hop community wasn't about to let his actions slide. Fellow artists and industry insiders were quick to voice their disapproval, with many outright condemning him. Meek Mill didn't hold back, tweeting, "69 going up in a federal courthouse today, kids. Message of the day, don't be an internet gangster. Be yourself." Future jumped on Instagram to brand him a rat, while Boosie Badass didn't mince words, calling his snitching a deal with the devil.
He made a deal with the devil. Yeah, Tekashi, once you do something like that, you are the devil.
Vince Staples kept the heat on Twitter, delivering cutting commentary, and Snoop Dogg didn't hold back his words either, posting multiple times about 6ix9ine on Instagram, even comparing him to Martha Stewart, who famously kept her mouth shut. But while 6ix9ine managed to pull it off, the odds don't seem as favorable for K Flock. Even within his circle, the idea of cooperation isn't catching on. In fact, K Flock's co-defendant, Sticky, has made it crystal clear that snitching isn't on the table. In a world where cutting deals and flipping flipping on your crew is often seen as the easiest escape. Sticky chose a different route, one rooted in unwavering loyalty. The prosecutors, eager to tighten their case against K Flock, approached Sticky with an offer to flip. They wanted him to turn over incriminating information about K Flock in exchange for a lighter sentence, a common play in high-profile cases where a co-defendant's testimony can be the final nail in the coffin. But Sticky didn't budge. Instead, he made a bold and defiant stand, letting everyone know that snitching was off the table, no matter what. Sticky didn't just keep quiet. He took his stance public. He posted a photo of himself with K Flock on social media, accompanied by a message that struck a chord with their supporters. Fought it rolling loud together. Guess we gotta fight these people together. His message didn't stop there. It's all fun and games till them people come. They said, tell us about Kevin. Help yourself. 30 years is a long time. Well, guess I'll see you in 30 years. Sticky's stance has set the tone, and it's clear that K Flock isn't about to break under pressure either. If there's one thing K Flock has made known, it's that he ain't playing no snitch game. He's not looking for a way out through deals or plea bargains. In fact, he took to Instagram to let the world know exactly where he stands, writing, "I'm gonna beat my case or get life cause I ain't coping, please." With his refusal to cooperate, it's looking like K Flock could be in jail for a while. But with his trial set to start soon, maybe things could take a different turn. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.